The saying goes, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and I'm here today to discuss that that is complete baloney. Not because it's backwards, but because there's a third option that we're going to speak about with a lot of clarity. Now, obviously, first of all, to some extent, yes, it matters you do know some things, and obviously, too, it is the case that if you don't know anybody, that's going to be a problem, too. Just because you happen to be related to the right person, or need a favor, or owe a favor to the right person, or otherwise in a position to help somebody out, doesn't actually change a darn thing about the fact that once you are on that stage, if you can't play the instrument, it doesn't matter. If you are needing to give a talk and you can't speak about what you have to because you have no relevant experience, it doesn't matter. You will not keep that position, and in fact, may take some others down with you in how badly you will mess it up if you only got there because of who you know. To the point of the quote, it's not what you know. There is still something to be said, right, for this other fallacy, that somehow just knowing is sufficient. That if I have the information, if I'm able or capable of doing it, then therefore I should be given the shot, or I should be in position doing it. Of course, not how that works either. This is one of the things that unfortunately gets trained into us for other reasons from a school way of thinking, that the objective is for me to be able to tell you certain facts, for me to have read certain books, for me to have gone to a certain number of lectures, as if that is of any use to anybody else. If your job is to know things, literally a trivia person or a historian who's got to pull these facts off the top of your head, then yeah, that is the work. In most other things, what we need is someone who can do something. Someone who can build something, who can get a certain result, who can coordinate with others to achieve some end greater than what we could do individually. And in these cases, I'm going to defer to a Henry Wadsworth Longfellow quote from 1849 in a novel called Kavanaugh. Probably goes without saying, of no relation to modern Kavanaugh from Modern Politics. This is 170 years ago. Is we judge ourselves by what we feel capable of doing, while others judge us by what we have already done. That we project into our future. What I could do, I should be entrusted to. And here's where occasionally the answer used to be in some situations, well, who you know got you a chance to try to do what you were capable of doing. And sometimes in some fields that might still be a limiting factor. But for many more people, it is much more the case that the second part of this Longfellow quote, that others judge us by what we have already done, is more often than not in a modern context, where you have the resources to self-teach, where you have the environments, at least in digital spaces, to be building things on your own, to be doing stuff, or to be producing results in a way that you don't necessarily need access to, if you're in software, materials. And if you can just do the things, well, then really, all we're really looking for is who has already done the thing that someone needs done. The other day, I had someone who hit me up from a research community and needed somebody who could do audio programming. And who I pointed him to wasn't somebody who went to a school for how to do audio programming and specialized in that question, but somebody who, time and time again, had done audio programming. I was like, here's someone. They've done the thing you need them to be able to do. They can do it for you too. Done. When I needed one of my games ported from an older platform to a newer platform because the systems had changed, OpenGL version crashed the old version on a mobile device, who I turned to was someone who had already solved that problem before in their own game, and I said, can I pay you to solve this problem for me? Because I can see you can solve that problem. When I needed to hire artists of specific kinds for character animation, for backgrounds of certain styles, as someone who is not a trained artist, didn't have the vocabulary of how to even articulate what I needed, what I looked for in portfolios who to hire for that was very much who has drawn things like what I need drawn. Now, it doesn't mean that anyone else isn't capable of that, but I had to browse for, aha, it speaks my language. When a company's trying to hire someone for a contract arrangement, and they need a certain kind of game built, part of why it's a different strategy to build out your portfolio, if you want to be a contract freelancer as opposed to fully independent or working at a bigger studio, is that quite often what they're looking for is that, well, they don't have game developers in-house. If they did, they wouldn't be looking for a freelancer or a contractor to take care of it. And then they're basically browsing around for what we need is a match 3, a platformer, some other, you name the genre. And if your portfolio does or doesn't have that, is going to be a massive difference between someone else having the same level of consideration. Because you might be capable of it, but they judge us by what we have already done. Less about what we know. Knowledge being typed in here and doing anybody any good. They're not going to hire you because you've read 100 books. They're not going to hire you because you've listened to hundreds of hours of YouTube talks. Right? Second question is not just who we know. Now, again, you still may have to get out there and meet some people. That's reality. but that will not make you capable of doing the work given the opportunity, regardless. You still need to have, and here's the third part where the actual answer is, already done it. You need to have already done something. Now, people pretend like this is a catch-22, and in some fields it may be, but in the case of digital creation, digital art, game programming, small team project management type things, these are things where very much it's not about, you don't have to do it at the same scale. And this is where we also think about strategically about people's portfolio development, and Home Team Game Dev, of course, is the group where I work with people on this. But that when someone gets a position to do something, they're not even looking for, was your particular game a big hit? They're looking for, did you solve the kind of problem in your game that we need someone to solve? And again, it's like that audio programmer. When this person got considered for that position, which he got and is doing a good job in, it wasn't a matter of, did you build exactly something that is on the scale of what we're trying to do? It was, have you solved the problems? Can we see in your history you've done the things that we need someone to do? And if they have, it takes the risk out of it. It takes the uncertainty out of it. And so this is where it comes down to, if I can show that I do the parts that I need to be able to do, rigging models, solving maybe some online networking problems, which are higher tier complexity. One of my old favorite mentor points was about when he's trying to interview people for programming roles, he loves to see where they've done something he's not even sure how they've done it. Because that's kind of breaking this person's mind of judging them by what they've already done, but they didn't even know to look for it till they saw it come from this person. What they achieved in performance and frame rate and scale and complexity and something. Even if what they need them to solve is different from that problem, that they have already done it is what's making the difference. It's not enough to just keep hovering at, oh, I could do that, I'm capable of that, someone should give me a shot to do it. The point that comes up, and I've been banging this drum for over a decade now, when we talk about our approach of like, okay, well, in Home Team, we're trying to get you to build off in a retro style game, simpler complexity, smaller scope, go through the motions doing this stuff, and then building your way up in complexity each project, another 5-10 years of game history. And we don't force that on people. That's a guideline, that's a recommendation, that's a thing we have repeatedly seen success from people to go through that process. One thing that I remember first hearing from somebody held them back from it when they were an undergrad. They said, well, but I can do that, so why should I bother? To which, if you can, and you do it, and you bother to do the thing that you're capable of doing, now the outside world, a la the Longfellow quote, knows you can. That's non-trivial. It separates a whole bunch of people who say and think they could do it from who actually can and has proven they can because they did it. But maybe more importantly, on a longer arc, each thing that we finish, we have an estimate of, I understand enough that I can solve the problems hidden in there to do that. Let me pick a classic game, right? Let's say like Excitebike, a classic NES game that I like. If I say I could build that, but I haven't yet, there are problems, realizations, solutions I haven't taken on until I've literally built something like that. Even if I'm capable of it, until I've done it, I haven't. But once we do, once it's behind us, once we've built it, it's behind us, it's evidence, it's proof that those are things that I did. I have solved those, and it went from I know enough to finish it if I'm in that situation to I have, which the important part of this is that strategically this expands the surface area of your next adjacent possibilities, of the things that you now are capable of you could do. That until you've done, A, the outside world doesn't believe you. B, until you do, you haven't solidified those gaps of, again, which you're capable to figure out when you put yourself in a situation. Which is why, going back to, and again, I go back to it because it's literally the environment I work in all day, every day, helping people. In Home Team, it's why they keep building project after project after project, continuously expanding that space of what's possible to build next, of what I've already built behind me as evidence of, I can do this genre, that genre. I can do this platform, that platform. I can do different kinds of games, different kinds of teams, different scopes, different scales. Each time increasing the area of when they want to pitch and lead a project. Increasingly have the problem of, gosh, there's so many things that I can build. That I've built so many things that I have the confidence that whatever I start within reason is going to be finishable. Takes away the early easy razor of, well, what's the only thing I can build? And maybe if I'm not excited by that, maybe that makes it harder to stay motivated. But where that motivation gets fixed, and it's like the video from the other day about the fact that motivation is the progress that we see when we look up to see, have I been making any changes? Do I have anything to show for it? Am I making good direction? And this is something where each time we're doing that, we are building up, again, a greater range of what we can do with greater confidence, and that is where the motivation is hidden. It is super, super important. The things that we do under our own direction, the things that I do because I want to learn from it, that I do because I want to take it on, because I want this in my background, for two reasons. One, to the original question here, Longfellows, we judge ourselves by what we feel capable of. Others judge us by what we've already done. In many cases, the boss won't give us the shot at the thing we feel capable of because we haven't already done it. If and when and how we find a way through home team, game dev, or otherwise to do the thing because we know we're capable of it and now it's behind us, we've already done it. Again, this is where you can kind of go back, talk to the boss and be like, oh, actually, I have solved problems like this. You're more likely to get that shot. But it's also why if we don't self-direct, if we don't continue doing hobby projects, side projects, recreational learning projects, even if we have a day job in industry, like some members of our groups do, but on the side here, they're doing whatever they feel like. What otherwise winds up happening is that their entire backstory of what they have already done and which doors that opens for them becomes an artifact of what the boss thought was important. What some other manager, some other party, some other entity, maybe even just a publisher, thought that they were ready and trustable to do becomes their path and fully determines what's possible in their future. But so long as you are maintaining hands on that wheel of what project I want to build next, what skills I want to focus on next, what I want to do, how I'm taking the area that I used to be capable of and now doing something with it. So it's in my past that I've done something with it. That is what opens up new possibilities. And the only way we can really steer and guide that is going to be what we want it to be and not what someone else wants it to be is if regardless of how else we're making games, we are also continuing to make games or other projects, other areas of skill, win, and practice according to our own direction. It's why I think for me it's such a big difference between how when I'm doing work for others, it drains my batteries. When I'm building things for myself because I want to build them, because I want to learn from it, because I want to have it behind me, because I want to make proof to the world, demonstration, I did solve this problem. I've already done it before. It refills my batteries instead of draining them. It's not what you know. Knowing isn't enough. It's not who you know. That might get you in a position, but maybe a position, frankly, you shouldn't have been in because you're not ready for, not prepared. The difference comes down to what have you already done? What have you built? What have you solved? What exists because of you that wouldn't have existed otherwise? Think about this too, right? You see a random tweet show up about a job listing. And you're trying to decide, do I want to go for that? If you've solved a kind of problem that they're looking for somebody to solve, 100% you're going to reach out about that. If you haven't, you might not even try. Even if you were just as capable before as after, sometimes the person we're convincing is ourselves. I've been going to GDC and other conferences and events in the industry for many years, and I would meet people who at these kind of conference events would be go out there making connections, hoping that if they just meet the right person, that's going to get them where they need to be. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people then come back from an experience saying they didn't really feel like they got anything out of it. It wasn't useful to them. And it's quite often because they might have met someone who could have been a potential collaborator, who could have been a potential source of being hired. Except at the time, they weren't doing anything or hadn't done anything to directly communicate to that person in a clear, proven way, I do the kind of thing that you need. That's why we should collaborate, because I've been making the kind of music you need. That's why we should collaborate, because I've finished the kind of projects you need people to help you finish. And that only comes from not just who you know. You can know hundreds of people. If you can't do the things because you haven't proven that you've done the things that they might need you to do, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. But for that matter too, again, to go back to the initial note of what you know, there are people I know who have PhDs in this subject who have never finished a game. And consequently, the kind of work, and they're still smart people, but the kind of work that they can find is different than maybe when they got into it, thinking that their hope was, I'd like to work on games. I'd like to build games. I'd like to be a part of that process. It's not a matter of what they know. It's a matter of not only also what they can do, it is what they have done, so it's behind them. In a way that you can't argue with, this exists now, because I made it exist.